is 9:30 on the dot with my time. And I want to welcome every one of you to this, I call it August occasion, put together by Imagine Ag and COMESA. And I appreciate the two organizations and other partner organizations for joining us here to put this discussion together. My name is Wally Fatumbi, and I work for FARA, Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. I have a very simple role this morning, just to facilitate the session. So I'll just be pulling knowledge out of my panelists and get the audience also to interrogate the subject matter. I believe so much that the subject matter this morning, advancing sustainable food system, a pathway to climate resilience, is truly very important. And it is tasking our collective intelligence to put things in place. Of course, the food system has been indicted strongly as a major contributor to climate change. But we must continue to eat. Climate is changing or not. And this is demanding that we must do something new. We are all aware of the effort of the United Nations that came up with a food system notation a couple of years ago. And we've been working on this assiduously to see how we bring forth a change. The need to advance sustainable food system builds on some of the data that is available in the public domain. The food system itself is indicted as one of the four issues that is contributing to climate change. The four is transportation, industry, agriculture, and land use in forestry. So the two of them speaks to fossil fuel use, and the other two speaks to agriculture. Current data indicated that 22% of green gas emission is actually coming from agriculture and land use and pasture. Of course, the larger part of the contribution of agriculture is actually coming from the livestock sector. We're going to get into that in the course of the discussion and see ways to do it. And so, 1/5 of the cause of carbon change is from the food system, and we are expected to work through it. And this is what we give a lot of attention to in the course of our discussion this morning. I'll go straight to use our time judiciously, and I have 5 of them already in the audience, and I'll be bringing them one after the other. I hope I have the 5 chairs. 2, 3, 4. I have 4 chairs. Okay, 4. Okay. The first person I'm going to call is the program manager, Community Technology Development Trust from Zambia, Madam Juliet Namgamba. Is Juliet here? Oh, okay. Juliet will be making a presentation in a virtual mode. So I got my 4 seats correct. Well, then the next person is Hani Mochid. Hani Mochid is the Chief Sustainability Officer of OCP Group. Hani, you're welcome. Please, you can have your seat from the other hand. I'm going to call on Jay. Jay Wadelgov is the Vice President Strategy and Global Development, Dairy Farmers of America. Dairy Farmers of America, that's an important organization. You're welcome, Jay. Then I'm going to call Luumbe Ngwali. I call him my brother from Zambia. Luumbe is the project officer of COMESA. COMESA is the sub-regional organization in the Southern Africa. And the last person I'm going to call is Stephen Muwaya. He's the Executive Director of Agro-Resilient Advisory in Uganda. You're welcome. Wow. This makes it good. Ladies and gentlemen, the subject matter here is quite important. And I will truly be glad to, before I get into your specific subject matter and discussion, to ask you to spend half a minute each to just express your personal sentiment about how sustainable food system can influence our drive towards adapting to or mitigating the climate change. Let's use that as the opening tea. We can start from Anna.
Well, thank you very much. Very happy to be part of this panel and to start my morning with through this discussion. My personal thoughts is that when we see numbers, when we see that today the soil contains 3 times the carbon there is in the atmosphere, and that the soil and agriculture actually are today big emitters, but they have the opportunity to become a carbon sink and even be a solution for the carbon issues, while enhancing soil quality and soil health and providing more yield. This is a real untapped potential and an opportunity that should be unlocked through developing more resilient food systems that are more climate friendly, and in the same time bringing a solution to the climate issue. This nexus is very important to think about. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Jay, let's get your opening thought. Half a minute.
Half a minute, yeah. Just very quickly, I think in the case of food systems, it's the absolute right approach to look holistically at what it is we want to get out of the limited amount of resources that we have. The problem is it's hard, it's complicated. It forces you to not think in a binary right, wrong, yes, no answer. You have to think about the complexity of the problem, the equation of sustainability, which, like all equations, has a numerator and the denominator.
Yeah.
It's what you take and what you bring, and the conversations are too much focused only on what is the negative impact. And if you want sustainable food systems, you need to bring into the equation what is you get from those choices you make.
Yeah, and that is quite important. It's a question of trade-off. Climate is changing, but we must continue to eat. So we need to balance it out and come up with solution option. My brother Mwali, let me get your opening remarks.
Thank you so much, moderator. I'll speak to the issues of sustainable food systems in the context of Africa, because we operate in Africa and in the COMESA region in 21 member states. So in the COMESA region, we talk of sustainable food systems as a twofold challenge that we have. How do we increase food production whilst adhering to climate resilience? And how do we increase food production to meet the demands of the growing population in Africa? So that's a twofold challenge that we have. Climate change on one side, population growth on the other side. How do we balance the two to ensure that we have enough food for the growing population, but also protecting the climate? So that's a twofold challenge that we are trying to address as COMESA.
Wow. Thank you very much. I think you have the third one, sustaining the livelihood of majority. I think in the COMESA region, we are still talking about 50 to 60% of the active working group in agriculture. How do you make them to live above poverty? It's another big one. And we need to balance all this. Let me quickly take yours. Yeah.
Thank you.
Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think that we must be true to the sustainability. We must look at the socio-economic. We must also look at the environmental aspects and also ensure that development can take place. And my strong areas in this area is that, one, we must look at soil health as a key ingredient that defines food systems. I also feel very strongly that we should look at how to minimize food loss, food waste, because at the end of the day, we must have enough. And the way to have enough is to ensure that nature is not burdened to produce what is wasted, what is lost. And so value addition is a very key element as well. And also we must look at how to manage the food without wasting and without losing it. Thank you.
That's an important angle to look at the discussion again. I mean, we produce by tasking nature, okay? And we get the trade-off of doing that. But we waste it again. I think we need to give a bit of attention to that. Anyway, I'll go back to Anani. And Anani, you work for OCP. And I'm sure you've been punched many times with that statement that makes it look as if the fertilizer is the devil, okay, that is destroying the environment. I doubt if that's the whole truth. But as it relates to the subject matter of sustainable food system and climate change, how can innovative fertilizer technology and responsible management contribute to building a resilient system to climate change? Secondly, what is OCP doing to ensure that farmers use fertilizer judiciously such that they get benefit from it without destroying the environment? You have a minute to respond to this. Thank you.
Then you have the response. Okay, so thank you very much for the very direct question. Let me maybe take a step back just to put on where is the dilemma that today the world is facing and need to be solved. You know that the world population, as my friend from the panel said, is growing and will be more than 9 billion people by 2050. This means that we need to increase the food production by 50%. And even if we work on the food loss and more, let's say, efficient food systems, this will allow, according to several partners such as FAO, etc., a saving of 10% of the need of the population. That we still need to produce at least 40% more food than what we produce actually today. And this means that fertilizers today that are already responsible for 50% of the world food production means that if you cut the use of fertilizers, you cut the food production by 50% today. This means that fertilizers will be vital and necessary to give back to the soils what is taken by the agricultural intensification. And this doesn't mean that the use of fertilizers is not a big topic as well. So the big question here is how to use these fertilizers. What does it mean a sustainable and responsible fertilization? What does it mean a customization, an adaptation of the fertilization to the exact needs of soils and crops? And adding to that, we have also, let me talk about this since we are in the COP and we are talking about food indices as well as climate indices. The Paris Agreement is achieving neutrality by 2050. So how to achieve this dilemma and this nexus of bringing, let's say, more food and deforesting more lands, while we need to capture more carbon and to reduce let's say, the footprints of the agriculture. We do think that fertilizers and soil health are a big solution for both these issues because customization can allow to enhance the yield up to 40–50% in some cases, which means that you can produce more food with less land. And this is what we have been doing at OCP since more than 8 years now. At OCP, we work, first of all, on the availability of fertilizers. you need to have the production capacity. It's important. You need to follow the need of the population. And this is why we are investing massively in a cycle to make sure that we bring enough fertilizers, but we also worked on the quality of these fertilizers. We adopted, since many years, what we call a science-based approach to produce fertilizers by mapping soils all over the African continent, especially, to whom we dedicated a special subsidiary, which is OCP Africa. So with different partners from universities, from governments, from organizations, research organizations, etc., we take samples all over the African continent, and then we analyze the soil, and we try to figure out what are the nutrients that are needed for the soil. The main nutrients that are used in fertilizers are phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium, actually. We don't produce nitrogen. We import the ammonia that we use, but in Morocco we have access to 75% of the world reserves in phosphorus. And phosphorus has been, let's say, identified by the FAO by the most limiting nutrient when it comes to yield all over the world. So soils need phosphorus. Phosphorus is a mineral. It's not a chemical component, and it's enriching the soils, because when the plants are growing in the beginning, they need 90% of phosphorus that is consumed all over the cycle is consumed in the beginning of the cycle of the crop production. Then we mapped these soils, but we found out that there are some other elements lacking in some soils in Africa. A little bit of sulfur, a little bit of borium, what we call micronutrients. And we started adding these micronutrients to these fertilizers that we produce.
Okay, Anon, let me stop you there,
Yeah,
because
please.
I'm going to give you another opportunity.
Yes.
But prepare your mind for this challenging thought.
Yes.
You work for fertilizer producer.
Yeah.
Soil health is an issue. Nitrogen fertilizer is leading to quick mineralization of the organic matter content of the soil. In principle, demeaning or diminishing, the soil health component, which is built on soil carbon, and reducing the capacity of the soil to actually sequestrate, as it were, the carbon in the atmosphere.
Yes.
What is OCP doing? I'm coming back. Don't answer now. What is OCP doing to ensure that we increase soil health? How is OCP reaching out to the farmers? Is OCP actually bringing the knowledge to the end user? I'll come back to you on that. Can you give the microphone to Jay? Jay, do you use nitrogen fertilizer for your pastures?
No.
Okay, I'm not asking you to answer me now, but the question I want to pose to you is this. The current statistics shows that 22% of carbon emission comes from agriculture. Okay, 16% of that, the data I have, I learned that it changed recently. 16% of that comes from the dairy industry that Jay is leading. The dairy, only milk and other product and cheese from the dairy is leading to 16% of carbon emission and climate change. And these statistics are known. Jay, I want to ask you, in your own opinion, can the dairy and livestock industry adopt sustainable practices? Will it be possible to have a very green dairy industry?
Yeah, short answer is yes, but to go back to some of your earlier comments, I think your numbers are a bit off, but that's okay. We can talk about it later. But if fertilizer is a devil, what is the cow, if you think we're that bad? I'll go back to my earlier comments about numerators and denominators and what is it that you get from what you take. And if you think about dairy and dairy's role in society, dairy is in every place it exists an end sector. It's not dairy or something else. It's dairy and. And that's because we operate inside a broad food system, right? We use crop inputs, but we make use of the things that aren't edible by humans. more than 80% of what is consumed by dairy cattle around the world is from land that is not farmable or products that are not consumable by humans. You turn that through the process of the ruminant into the highest quality nutrition you could get.
Yeah.
And by the way, you make some wonderful fertilizer that actually brings soil health in. So you have to think about dairy in a food system as being a critical part of that. And that numerator is not just the nutrition that you get from dairy, it's the fact that it's local. In environments where you have shortest supply chain for highest quality nutrition, for resilience, that's essential. If you want to invest in an ag system that requires you to produce a cashew and export it around the world to have it dehulled and export it again to have it sold and collect the money and then hope you can buy food with that money and bring that money in and deal with climate issues and deal with currency issues and deal with trade issues, the risk is huge. Dairy de-risk that by having local dairy. So when you think about food systems and you can think not binary, dairy has a hugely important role holistically in creating that anchor. Then to your question, can you make the cow green? Absolutely. And we see this around the world. Right? If you look at what you get in terms of the output from the cow, all the good things, right? Nutrition, livelihoods, economic viability, and you apply it to the cost you get in terms of footprint, we know the pathway, we know the pathways to take parts of the world like East Africa, like Africa, and dramatically improve the performance, dramatically reduce that denominator, the footprint. Tools that are available today. To use some math, if you look at globally, the analysis that we've done as part of the work of the Global Dairy Platform under Pathways to Dairy Net Zero would suggest that 40% of what you need to get to a net zero position on dairy to make your cow green is best practice. It's available. And in many cases, it's best practice that is no regrets because the farmer gets money from it. Increased productivity by better animal care, smarter feeding, access to fresh water, better veterinary health. So that's available just in training. There's another 35% that's available in technologies that we have today. You just have to have a way to implement them. It's a feed additive. It's a manure digester system or a biogas system you can make very small and portable. It's things that we know work. We just have to have an economic model for them. There's another 25% that you have to think about. But that means today, if you come into markets like where COMESA operates and you apply best practice right now and existing tools, you can make your cows a beautiful green if you like and get all the other benefits that come with it. And again, thinking about it holistically, create an anchor for your economies and your resilience and your food systems. So, yes, and then yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jay, for that intelligent response. Please, audience, I'm going to give you opportunity to interrogate some of these so you can put down your question. There's going to be a chance. But I'm going to come back to you, Jay, one more time. And what I want to talk about is, what is your organization doing, to ensure that most farmers, you stand in America, farmers in America, as well as farmers in Africa, are adopting. I think adoption is a question of conscientizing everyone to see the need to do this without anyone chasing you. What are you doing to change the mind of the dairy farmers, around that? Thank you very much. I'll come back to take my answer to that question. You can reflect. My brother, Luembe. Yeah, you work for COMESA, and that's a big sub-regional organization that brings country together. You know, the issue of climate change is like the sky is falling. It is not a question of, it is not solely my family problem. It is all of us problem. If the sky falls on every one of us, then we're finished. And everyone must do something. So sub-regional type of networking and relationship is quite important. So how is COMESA sub-regional linkages with the countries currently promoting sustainable practices that reduces climate change? And I want you to give a very good allusion to best practice in farming and the issues of soil health. So over to you, my brother.
Thank you so much. You've mentioned quite some critical points there. Climate change is everybody's business, and when you look at regionally, climate change does not choose.
It does not choose, yeah.
For example, currently the region is battling with the impacts of El Nino, but at the same time we also have impacts of La Nina. Recently we had those floods in Mozambique, in Malawi, and Zimbabwe as well. So that has had a huge impact on the agriculture and food system. Now, how do we promote food security in the region in the face of climate change? COMESA comes in and talks to the governments and says, hey, guys, you need to wake up. How do you improve your policies, for instance, to ensure that your food systems, your agriculture systems are resilient to climate change and producing enough for the growing population? So in the region, as COMESA, we basically now use our mandate to bring these countries together to share best practices. For instance, we have the Malabo Declaration at continental level. COMESA now comes in and says, how do we domesticate the Malabo Declaration to ensure that governments are producing enough in the face of climate change? We also promote research regionally to ensure that we have a regional outlook of climate change in terms of its impacts on the agriculture sector. We also work with the governments to generate data using satellite imagery, and if possible to set up what I can call early warning systems so that we can anticipate these climate impacts on the agriculture sector, but put forth interventions to ensure that the climate is protected while at the same time agriculture systems produce enough for the growing population in the COMESA region.
Let me quickly ask you. You know, the subject of El Nino year and risky terrain, you can't just predict what will happen. I mean, is COMESA putting together any strategy for resilience, shock absorber, when these things happen? Or COMESA is leaving it to, well, when we get to the bridge, we will know how to cross it. If trouble comes, we go to World Food Program to give us relief material. Specifically, what are the things that are on ground? Are you promoting strategic grain reserve in COMESA countries? How many countries do have this? Are you promoting farming insurance and related things? That is the question you will respond to when and if I come back to you. Thank you very much, my brother, for doing that. And now I want to move to Stephen Muyawa, the Executive Director of Agro Resilient Advisory in Uganda. I mean, all over the place in the cyberspace, the good work you are doing is actually speaking for your organization, and we are appreciative of that. You know, the subject of promoting climate resilient agriculture, it's quite important, especially in Uganda, where you sit. So, but the role of the smallholder farmer is really very, very vital. I wouldn't want to go into the details of explaining who a smallholder farmer is. Possibly you know them, you know. But if you're going to convince a smallholder farmer to do anything, then he must be ready to get certain benefits from it. If there is no benefit, then he's not going to do it. And the type of issues we're talking about, the issues of soil health, increasing productivity, resilience, require investment that does not bring return immediately. So how are you working with the farmers to adopt this sustainable and resilient system from your organization point of view?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that question. First of all, I must say that we have a lot of learning, and we must say that
People are online.
the discussion at a global level is also quite important in guiding local action. And why I'm saying that is that recently we've had the Cornivia joint work on agriculture, and in Sharm el-Sheikh we had a number of recommendations that and guidelines for for countries and parties to address issues relating to agriculture. But I think one important recommendation that was made that I think we need to take note of is that we must recognize that any policy responses that would be successful should actually put the farmers at the center as change agents. And I want to say that this directs us to recognize that if farmers are given the chance to share their knowledge, to exchange information between themselves, and to really inform policy on agriculture, I think this would be a very useful approach. I must also say that, as you said, agriculture is a key sector with respect to emissions. But also, we must recognize that agriculture is perhaps the most impacted sector by climate change. And this is very important for us to recognize that we must focus our effort to address the challenges at the farmer level. And this means that we must work with the farmers directly to deliver these concerns. I must say that the solutions that we are looking for must be context specific. I think the farmer in the US, like my colleague could say, coming from, and the farmer in Africa are totally different. Our needs are different. Our challenges are different. But we are all impacted by the climate, and therefore this is something that we need to address. I want to say that the best way that we must get the farmer playing the role that he should is to create the necessary change and information exchange that would deliver that. And looking at how to address the soils, the soil health is very important for the farmer because he's the custodian of this resource and he's the producer who is going to help us get results and get food. I think we must see that the farmer is helped to transform and adapt to the climate change. And this is very important in terms of how to access information, how to play a leading role in accessing technology, capacity, and also resources. These are the challenges that we must address at the level of the farmers, the smallholder in our region. I think this is very important for us to look at. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for expressing that. You know, you use a word that touched a nerve in me, and that's a very sensitive one. You talked about policy pushed by the farmers. Do you have an example of such policy that is pushed by the farmers already and in Uganda? I will get back to you and you will respond to that. I'm not coming to you right away, but I want to know if we are taking the video from Juliet. Are we taking the video from Juliet? So the video is going to go for 5 minutes, but I'm not going to take the entire 5 minutes. So I'm going to tell you once we get the message from the video, we stop it. And I will give the audience 5 minutes to raise very fast question, then I'll come back for the second round. Thank you. So the video, you have the floor to quickly put it on. Please give us volume in the hall.
Good morning, participants. I'm joining you from Zambia, and apologies I couldn't be on the panel in person. My name is Juliet Nangamba. I work with the Community Technology Development Trust in Zambia as a programs manager, and I will share perspective on initiatives or approaches that foster sustainable food systems or sustainable agriculture and foster resilience within farming communities. I'll also share some of the lessons that we're learning, some of the innovations or what stakeholders can be doing in line with this. To start with, it is very important to acknowledge that the climate crisis is accelerating the food systems crisis. This is due to intensified weather availability of especially temperature and precipitation. Global food systems are responsible for 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions and loss of biodiversity. We cannot also ignore the intersectionality of the climate crisis, the debt crisis, and structural inequalities acting together on food systems, which has the greatest impacts on women and children who are the frontliners of the crisis intersectionality. Unsustainable food systems undermine food security and nutrition while amplifying the inequalities of the right to food for women and children. Therefore, it is important that we begin to integrate the food system approaches in our climate action, NDCs, national adaptation plans, and NBSAF. And it's very gratifying to see that the COP28 has actually prioritized food systems agenda this year. So what are the projects and innovations that championing sustainable food systems? To give examples, but before I can go into that, I would like to state also that it is important to make sure that food systems are more local, just, sustainable, equitable, and resilient for all. To do this, it is important that innovation technologies to transform food systems are premised on respect for smallholder farmers and indigenous people and their knowledge, as enshrined in the UN DRIP, UN DROP, and the International Treaty for Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. This will mean that we're taking a human rights-based approach to food security and nutrition security and the transformation of food systems. The community-driven projects that I have witnessed and have been part of include sowing diversity equal to harvesting security projects. I see that this project really had an impact on communities because it brought the farmers at the center of decision making through participatory research in crop development of adapted crops and varieties, as well as nutrition. It also fostered community-based seed production to ensure more access to inputs such as seed. It also fosters conservation of genetic resources for food and agriculture in community seed bank, making these resources more available to smallholder farmers. Another project that I can reflect on is the Seed and Knowledge Initiative. This is championing agroecology practices, upscaling of organic inputs such as bokashi, tea manure, and participatory research in agroecology. Some of the key lessons and best practices. The FAO says it all begins with the seed.
Yeah, thank you very much for that video. I think from my side, I think I got the message, and I have things already in my notes that he mentioned that are really very pertinent. So I want to ask my panelists to please come back to their seat. We have enjoyed the video. I mean, there are community projects that are going on, and she mentioned the need for the food system to be local. That touched me, and that speaks around the issues of food sovereignty. Possibly, if we hit what we can produce, we give attention to the forgotten food or the underutilized commodity, we will reduce the carbon emission, because those commodities are used to our environment and they yield well. We will also deal with the issue of food and nutrition security. She talked about sustainable production system and all those stuff. So we appreciate that very much. Now, I want to ask the audience, if there is any 1, 2, 3 quick questions. Let me just see your hand, then I can give you opportunity to present your questions before we go to the second round. Yes, I have seen that.
Just interested in the OCP view and others' views of the place of legumes in Africa. They have a higher phosphate requirement but save a lot of nitrogen. Is that part of the answer to too much nitrogen?
Okay, you pick the question. So when I give you the space, you will respond. Any other urgent, quick one? Okay, if there is no, then let me start from you. So respond to these questions and go to my very tough question.
Yeah. Okay. So then thank you for raising the point. Actually, this is true. Phosphorus and nitrogen are different. They don't have the same role. The latest scientific work proved that when the crop is growing, it needs more than 80% of phosphorus in the beginning and only 20% of nitrogen. And it needs nitrogen in the end of the cycle more than in the beginning. So putting nitrogen and phosphorus with the same amounts in the beginning of the cycle is a mistake. And this is why we are working today on, first of all, customization, as I said. So we used to customization means adapting the level of phosphorus and nitrogen in the input that you are giving to the soil, to the crop, and to the soil itself. The fertilizer that you give to the to maize is not the fertilizer that you should give to other crops, for example, and to soils. We used to have only 4 types of regular fertilizers, you know, the NPK, DAP, etc., all phosphate-based. There's no 100% nitrogen, but it's not a good thing. Now we developed more than 50 additional formulas depending on the analysis of soil that we did. For example, in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian market was like using only DAP all the time. It's a common fertilizers with phosphorus, nitrogen, and so on. And we did some trials. We found out that they have a lack of sulfur. So we developed NPS with a little bit more sulfur in the fertilizer and less nitrogen and less phosphorus. And the yield went up to 40%. This is proved. In 4 years, all the Ethiopian markets moved from DAP to NPS. And if there was no, let's say, result and real facts from that, you cannot make all the second biggest market in Africa move to NPS as a solution. Okay. So this is important. And I just wanted to say that we mapped more than 30 million hectares in the African continent to make sure that we are producing the right nutrients for that.
Yeah, that's really very good. I got a wind of that huge soil data with you. We are coming after you for that.
It's public knowledge, actually.
Yeah, it's public knowledge. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to Jay and the dairy subject. You know, my question to you is, what are you doing to ensure that dairy farmer, okay, absorb the practice or the attitude to go green? If there is a successful case study, it will be good to share. You work in America, and I know that you do a bit of things also in Africa. Do you have any recommendation that we can push to the dairy industry? Of course, it's not very big in Africa yet, but we will surely get there soon. Thank you. You have half a minute to respond.
So I promise I'll go over. I'm going to focus on what we're doing in Africa. The group I'm representing here is called Global Dairy Platform. Global Dairy Platform is made up of most of the biggest dairy companies around the world, companies who have for decades been doing dairy development in our own markets and everywhere, including in Africa. You'll see projects in the past in South Africa. You'll see projects currently in Nigeria. But collectively, we decided about 5 years ago to focus on East Africa. So I'm going to share some examples of what we've done in East Africa. For us, that would be immediately Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda. And there we looked around and said, how can you show holistically, so back to the subject of food systems, holistically, what can dairy do as part of a solution? And we looked at it in the first instance across the entire value chain. Right? We come in not as saying, this is what you are doing wrong, this is what you must do right. We come in saying we have experience, we have knowledge, we have expertise. To Stephen's comment, how do we help you find the local solution that you own? And we started by saying we have to look at the full value chain of dairy. Right? Historically, development work has been one end or the other. You have a problem, World Food Program comes in, they give you some aid and you feed it to people and the child has school milk and that's great. Until the aid is gone and there is no value chain to continue that nutrition. Or you have someone come in and say, let's put a cow in every backyard, and that's great until you realize you haven't created a market for the milk, and eventually that cow disappears. How do you look at the farmer and the processor and the market? How do you look at the policies that government have to encourage consumption of safe dairy products? How do you create an environment where processors can be successful, where farmers can be profitable? And that's the work that we've done in East Africa for the last number of years. And the proof points are there. Right, the proof points have shown us that even with those incremental interventions, that first bucket of just sharing best practice, of having farmers talk to farmers about what they can do better, working with processors as part of our global dairy program, and working with consumers, we've seen where you take organizations that were nearly broke and they doubled their net income, where the farmers have seen their productivity increase nearly 50% and their bottom line increase nearly 50%. And along the way, the environmental footprint, that intensity dropped by more than a third.
30%?
30%. So on the
Wow.
back of
That's
that,
great.
we've been able to go and look at sourcing more money to figure out how we can scale that. Because it's easy to see how when you look at that full chain and you use dairy as part of the solution, not the single answer, that becomes a powerful tool to help not only other parts of the food system around it, but to the broader question, if you imagine that you need to get a lot better, right? This is first step in getting better. When you create those smallholder but professional farmers, right? Really important difference. You can still have 4 or 5 cows, but if you're a professional farmer who can make a living, now those people are able to take the next technology, the next tool, to be even more efficient, to produce even more milk, to do it with even less of a footprint.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Thanks a lot, Jay. And I think from the fertilizer, the OCP group, and from the dairy group, those are two core sector that are indicted for contributing. And what I'm getting clearly now is that no, it's a question of using appropriate practices. Is that? It's a question of doing it right. And so getting our agriculture, okay, or our food production system to be sustainable is not rocket science. It is doable if we use the right practices. Now, getting the people to use the right practice is what we need to push to the policymaker. Okay? Is it going to be a question of carrot and rod, incentivizing good behavior, or punishing the bad behavior? That's an additional question to the one I asked you earlier on, Mwali. So, you know, what I asked you earlier on is around the strategies and the shock you put together. But how is COMESA, a policy organization, technical policy, as it were, helping to change the mindset of people involved in agriculture towards climate resilience? You have just 1 minute, not even half.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so COMESA is doing a lot. I'll mention, in the interest of time, a few key issues that we're working on. We promote research. We work with the Food, Agriculture, Natural Resources Policy Analysis Network, or FANAPAN, to ensure that research is generated, but also policies influenced by the evidence from that research. So we also organize policy dialogues where member states come together and share best practices, especially on adoption of climate-smart agriculture. We also bring together the smallholder farmer, capacitate them with information as well as knowledge on how they can practice CSA to increase their yields, but also while faced with those impacts of climate change. Apart from policy dialogues and also research, we also have regional policy regulatory documents and frameworks. For instance, we have the COMESA Resilience Framework, which basically speaks to your question. Are we reactive? The answer is no. We are promoting the region now to be more proactive. How do we put in place early warning systems and anticipate the impacts of climate change on the agriculture system and put in place strategies and interventions to ensure that even when the impacts come, they are reduced? So we're talking about issues of disaster risk reduction here. Whether they are floods or El Nino, impacts of climate change will be there, but how do we reduce those impacts to ensure that the food system remains resilient and we're producing enough for the population? We also promote trade. So we talk about harmonization of policies, strategies in ensuring that trade in food is ensured in the region. For example, the food system is so much connected that crop failure in Zambia, for instance, may translate in food insecurity in the DRC, in Malawi, and in Zimbabwe. So we ensure that countries come together, we harmonize the policies, the strategies, especially eliminating barriers to trade, to ensure that the food that is produced in one region is able to move around these countries. So we basically talk about the smallholder farmer improving their capacity to produce in the face of climate change by using climate resilient seed varieties. We tackle the policy aspect as well as research and many other interventions. But for the interest of time, I'll focus on those. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. You've done very well. To everyone, I'm coming to you, but to everyone, maybe we should also begin to look at technology, new technology generation, and investment in technology generation. You know, why did I think about that? Some frontline countries are already coming up with a different way of producing their food. Aeroponics, hydroponics, smart irrigation, and so on and so forth. In case some country will refuse to reduce green gas emission, and it becomes a big trouble. Don't you think African countries should begin to think in that direction? It's just for us to have a second resilience alternative in case we are unable to solve this problem. But that is for another day. My brother, I have asked you before to talk, because you talk about the policies that is pushed by farmers themselves. An example of that, and that's how such things can help us achieve climate resilience. Just 1 minute.
Thank you. The first point is that really policy action to support farmers achieve better is to do with how do we promote farmer self-organization.
Self-organization.
It's very important that farmers are able to lead, to own, and actually to be the promoters. You see, what we are talking about should be actually promoted by farmers themselves. And the only way we can do that is to enhance that. And I think the most important thing is we must promote policies that help farmers to work together. In my country now, we have what we call the parish development model, which is focusing at the lowest level of governance. The idea is, how do you get farmers organized at that level? So the promotion here is to create viable organizations, economically viable organizations. And most of these will fall in the category of cooperatives that will bring together farmers. And in that way, it will be easier for farmers to access information, to access new technologies, and actually to access resources, because cooperatives themselves are recognized organizations with status that can borrow money, that can actually get. So this is a good way of helping small farmers who may have no status to actually access these resources through that. The second dimension is how do we help farmers by getting into the value chain processes. And I think the point is, if we are looking at accessing livelihoods that are beneficial to communities, where they are able to make money for their families, there must be a way of focusing on those value chains that contribute. The example was given of dairy. A farmer may have 5 farmers, yes, 5 cows, as you said. But I think the most important thing is, how do we mobilize the necessary technology to be efficient, to be more productive, and to deliver more sustainable income for the family. And I think the point is we believe that key value chains that are resilient should be promoted to support farmers.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing out all this point. I mean, bringing farmers together, creating opportunity for them to acquire knowledge, and persuading them. Maybe creating incentives for those who use the appropriate knowledge. I have 5 minutes to go. 2 of the 5 minutes belongs to Madam Hedit, and 3 belongs to the audience. So I come back to you, the audience. Any quick comment, questions, contribution? Yes, very good. I saw it on your face that you have a comment all the while.
Excuse me, because I'm French francophone.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I try to speak English, but
Okay.
it is not true. Yeah. So I think we talk about the system the food system security in Africa. I think there is potential in Africa to growth, to have a lot of product for food, for food security. But our problem is the governance. We have, you must sensibilize the leader. Because we have so many organizations, or the farmer organization, but the problem stay in the leaders. Donc, maybe we can try. We can try to sensibilization our leader for growth, for have sustainable food security. It is my point, because it is very important for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I've seen the second hand behind you. Thank you. Please just go half a minute.
Okay, I'll make it less than that. So I just also wanted to find out from the panelists, they're working with a smallholder farmer, and much of what we are talking about in terms of interventions, whether is it greening the cow or adopting climate resilient seed, has to do with mindset change. So how easy has it been for the farmers to actually start adopting these practices?
That's great. I think I've exhausted the time for the audience now, except there is any pressing one that can be done in half a minute. If there is none, let me ask you, quarter of a minute to respond to that question. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 sentences only.
I think definitely you need to work hand in hand with the smallholder farmer. We are doing this actually. We supported more than 2 million farmers all around Africa to raise capabilities and adopt together what are the best practices to implement in the farming activities and in the use of fertilizers. And this is just to say that you cannot achieve all these targets without working hand in hand with the local farmer and training them.
You exhaust your time.
Farmers want to hear from farmers. Women farmers want to hear from women people to help them. And farmers want to see examples. So you need to do that.
You are true. Quick.
Continuous capacity building and engagement of the local farmer is very important. So we've continued engaging these farmers to train them, for instance, on the new information available, as well as the seed varieties that are available.
Thank you. Last point. Okay.
I think farmer platforms. I agree totally. Farmers need to learn from each other. Okay. The farmer platforms, even ICT platforms, such as WhatsApp, platforms for farmers are very effective in allowing them to do so. But the most important thing also is, who are the farmers? We must recognize that women farmers dominate the farming landscape in many of the smallholders.
So we give attention to dairy, to gender. Thank you very much. You made your very good point. In conclusion, I mean, soil health and fertilizer are not enemies, they are complementary. The dairy can be made green and the technologies are available. I mean, good behavior is hard to get, but we must persuade, conscientize, and use policy to get farmers to work together. That's the summary, and I think we addressed the key messages that we set for this section. Let me quickly call Madam Judy to give 1 minute closing.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming to this event. I would like to ask the representative from Comoros and from Zambia, who are our member states of COMESA, to just give 1/2 a second thank you for everyone here. Thank you for the organizers for NDC partnership.
Thank you very much. Hello. Thank you very much, Mrs. Judith. This event is very important because we have learned a lot of things about the sustainable food system. So I can congratulation or felicitation our panelists. He responds our need, our how do we say? Because you know the French is very
great.
Donc I congratulate because we learned a lot of things. So when we return back at my country, we can try to.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Half a minute.
Thank you so much. Half a minute, yes. So I just wanted to say that as the world grapples climate change, food security is a key issue in Africa. And to actually listen to from the panelists the number of mitigation or interventions that could actually help Africa become food secure, I think this is really great. And we look forward actually to perhaps working with the different organizations apart from Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, if they could, that could also be brought forward to Southern Africa. I'm from Zambia, so that's Southern Africa. That would really be good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for my panelists for doing a great job. Thank you. Okay, a group photo. Okay, I should join. Yeah, please, you can join us.